I knew something was wrong the moment I smelled smoke. Not the comforting smell of a neighbor's fireplace or someone burning toast. This was acrid, chemical, the kind of smell that triggers every primal instinct in your body screaming run. I bolted upright in bed, my heart already racing before my brain fully processed what was happening. The smoke detector was shrieking, and through the gap under my bedroom door, I could see an orange glow flickering like something alive and hungry. It was 2:47 a.m. on a Thursday morning in February. I was 26 years old, living in a modest two-bedroom apartment in Vancouver's East Side that I'd been so proud to afford on my museum curator salary. And in that moment, wrapped in my grandmother's quilt with my laptop still open on the nightstand from where I'd fallen asleep researching Indigenous art collections, I had no idea that my entire life was about to burn down in more ways than one. I didn't think. I just moved, grabbed my phone, my purse from the chair, and ran. The hallway was filling with smoke faster than seemed possible. I could hear other doors opening, voices shouting, feet pounding down the stairs. Someone, Mr. Kowalski from 3A, I think, yelled at me to get out now. The cold February air hit me like a slap when I burst through the building's front entrance. Snow was falling in soft, fat flakes that seemed obscene in their beauty, while behind me, flames were already visible in what I knew was my apartment window. Third floor, corner unit, apartment 3C. The building had 12 units, 12 families, 12 lives that could have been destroyed because of what I didn't know yet. I stood there on the sidewalk in my pajamas and winter coat I'd managed to grab, watching firefighters arrive, watching water arc through my window, watching everything I owned turn to smoke and ash. Mrs. Chen from the corner store was there, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. She didn't speak much English, but she held my hand, and that was enough. My phone was ringing. I looked down at the screen through tears I didn't realize I was crying. Mom? Thank God, I breathed, answering it. Mom, there's been a fire. Isabelle, do you have any idea what time it is? Her voice was sharp, annoyed. Not concerned. Not worried. Annoyed. I blinked. Mom, my apartment is on fire. Right now. I'm standing outside and, oh, for heaven's sake. I could hear her exhale, that particular sound she made when she thought I was being dramatic. Well, you're obviously fine if you're calling me. Isabelle, we've talked about this. You can't keep calling us every time something goes wrong in your life. You're 26 years old. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Your father and I are trying to sleep, she continued. We have the dinner party with the Hendersons tomorrow, and I haven't even started on the appetizers. Did you call your building manager? That's what they're for. Mom, honestly, Isabelle, you need to learn to handle these things yourself. Remember what your father always says. You made your bed. Now lie in it. You chose to move to that neighborhood. You chose that apartment. These are the consequences of your choices. Behind me, part of my roof collapsed. The sound was like the world cracking open. I have to go, my mother said. Try to be more careful next time, okay? And please don't call this late again, unless it's a real emergency. She hung up. I stood there, with the phone against my ear, the dial tone buzzing, watching my entire life burn, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like ginger and sesame oil, because a woman I barely knew had more compassion than my own mother. Not their problem, I whispered to no one. Not their problem. The fire marshal led us back in 5 days later to see what could be salvaged. The answer for me was almost nothing. The fire had started in my unit specifically, in my bedroom closet, and spread from there. Quick action from the building's sprinkler system, and the fire department had saved most of the other apartments, but mine was destroyed. Blackened walls, melted plastic, the acidic smell of destruction that would probably live in my nostrils forever. Miss Reeves? A man in a dark jacket approached me as I stood in what used to be my living room, holding a smoke-damaged picture frame that had somehow survived. The glass was cracked, but the photo was intact. Me and my best friend Maya at our university graduation, both of us laughing with our arms around each other. Yes? Detective Owen Park, Vancouver Fire Investigation Unit. He showed me his badge. I need to ask you some questions about the night of the fire. My stomach dropped. Investigation unit? I thought. Isn't it obvious what happened? Electrical fire or something? His expression didn't change. Actually, that's what we need to talk about. Can we sit down somewhere? We ended up at a coffee shop 2 blocks away, one of those places that stays open until midnight for students and insomniacs. Detective Park ordered us both coffees and settled across from me with a notepad that he didn't open. Miss Reeves, I'm going to be direct with you. This wasn't an electrical fire. The fire originated in your bedroom closet, specifically from what appears to be a timed incendiary device. Someone deliberately set your apartment on fire. The world tilted. That's not possible. Who would? That's what I'm trying to determine. He finally opened his notepad. The device was crude but effective. Kitchen timer connected to a simple ignition system with accelerant. Set to go off at approximately 2:45 a.m., which matches witness reports of when the fire started. The question is, who had access to your apartment? I felt sick. I don't understand. You're saying someone broke in and your door wasn't forced. There were no signs of break-in. Whoever did this had a key or knew your lock code. He paused. Who has access to your apartment, Miss Reeves? My friend Maya has a spare key, but she would never. Anyone else? I thought about it. My landlord, obviously. The building manager. That's it. No family members? Something cold settled in my chest. My parents live in Victoria. They've never even visited this apartment. Detective Park made a note. But they have your address? Of course, but I stopped. Wait, what are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything yet. I'm gathering information. He looked up at me. Miss Reeves, we pulled the security footage from your building entrance. I need you to look at something. He pulled out a tablet and turned it toward me. The screen showed grainy black and white footage of my building's front entrance, timestamp reading 11:47 p.m. on the night of the fire. The woman entering the building wasn't a stranger. It was my mother. I must have made a sound because Detective Park said, "You recognize her?" That's my mom. Patricia Reeves. My voice sounded like it was coming from very far away. But what is she doing here? She said she was in Victoria. They had a dinner party the next day. He swiped to another image. Same camera, different timestamp. 12:14 a.m. My mother leaving, walking quickly with her head down. According to the timer mechanism we found, the device was set to go off approximately 2.5 hours after it was activated. If it was set around midnight. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. No, I pushed the tablet away. No, you're wrong. My mother wouldn't. She couldn't. Miss Reeves, I need to ask you some difficult questions. Have you had any recent conflicts with your parents? Any financial disputes? My mind was racing, trying to make sense of nonsense. 3 weeks ago. They called asking to borrow money. $50,000. They said my stepfather, Patricia's husband, Gregory, had lost his job and they were behind on mortgage payments. But I'd just paid off my student loans. I didn't have that kind of money saved yet. I offered them $5,000, everything I could spare. But they said that was insulting, that I owed them more than that after everything they'd done for me. Everything they'd done for you? Raising me, I guess? I don't know. Our relationship has always been. I struggled for words. Transactional. When I was younger, they held everything over my head. We paid for your braces. You owe us. We let you go to university. You owe us. When I graduated and took this job instead of something higher paying like they wanted, they were furious. Said I was wasting their investment in me. Detective Park was writing quickly now. And when you couldn't give them the full $50,000, my stepfather called me ungrateful. Said I was selfish, that family was supposed to help family. My mother just went quiet, which is somehow worse. Then she said, I hope you can live with your choices, Isabelle. I hope they don't come back to haunt you. I felt tears burning behind my eyes. I thought she meant emotionally. I thought she was just being manipulative like always. I didn't think she literally meant. I couldn't finish. Couldn't say out loud what my brain was slowly, horribly piecing together. My mother had driven 3 hours from Victoria to Vancouver, entered my apartment building at midnight, and set a fire designed to go off while I was asleep. Miss Reeves, do you have renter's insurance? The question seemed to come from nowhere. Yes. The building required it. Why? How much coverage? I think $75,000 for personal property, plus liability coverage. I'd have to check the exact. I stopped, stared at him. Oh my God. They were the beneficiaries on my old policies. When I lived at home, they set up all my insurance and put themselves as beneficiaries. I changed everything when I moved out, but they don't know that. They think if you died in the fire, they'd receive the insurance payout. The coffee shop suddenly felt too bright, too loud, too much. I need to use the washroom. I barely made it before I threw up. When I came back, Detective Park had ordered me water and pushed it across the table. I know this is difficult. Difficult. I laughed, but it came out broken. My mother tried to kill me for $75,000. Difficult seems like an understatement. Actually, he said carefully, we think it might be more than that. We've been running a parallel investigation. Your stepfather, Gregory Reeves, is currently under investigation for fraud. He was fired from his position as CFO at a medical supply company 3 months ago after an internal audit revealed he'd been embezzling funds. We're talking about $2 million over 5 years. The water glass froze halfway to my mouth. $2 million? The company chose not to press charges in exchange for restitution, but your stepfather doesn't have the money to pay them back. That's likely why they needed to borrow from you. But here's where it gets more complicated. We found something else when we executed a search warrant on your parents' home this morning. He pulled out another document. Life insurance policy. My name at the top. This was taken out 6 months ago. $200,000 policy on your life with your mother and stepfather as equal beneficiaries. I never signed that. I never even knew about it. We don't think you did. It appears your stepfather used his position as your former guardian to forge documents. He had copies of your signature from old school forms, your social insurance number, everything he needed. It's fraud, but it's also attempted murder. If you had died in that fire, they would have collected $275,000, enough to cover the restitution, pay off their mortgage, and have money left over. I couldn't breathe. The coffee shop walls seemed to be closing in. Miss Reeves? Isabelle? I need you to stay with me here. They were going to kill me. My voice sounded hollow. My own mother was going to burn me alive in my sleep for money. I'm sorry. I know this is. When I called her, the memory was like glass cutting through my brain. When I called her from the sidewalk, watching everything burn, she told me not to bother her unless it was a real emergency. She knew. She knew the fire was happening because she said it, and she's still. The world went sideways, and Detective Park caught my arm, steadying me. I think we should take a break, he said gently. Is there someone I can call? Your friend Maya? I nodded, unable to speak, and watched him step away with my phone. Through the coffee shop window, I could see the winter sun setting over Vancouver, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. It was beautiful. Life was continuing like normal for everyone else while mine had just imploded. My phone buzzed with a text. I looked down at the screen out of habit. Mom, heard about your little fire. Hope you learned to be more careful with candles. Let us know if you need anything. Dad and I are here for you. Candles. She was already establishing her alibi, her narrative. The concerned parents, the careless daughter. I could picture her saying it to neighbors, to her friends at church. Poor Isabelle. Always was a bit scattered. Left a candle burning, probably. I took a screenshot of the text and showed it to Detective Park when he returned. She doesn't know we know, he said quietly. What happens now? Now, we build our case. The evidence is solid. We have her on camera. We have the device remnants with her fingerprints. We have the fraudulent insurance policy. We have the embezzlement trail. But I need to ask you something difficult. When we arrest them, and we will arrest them, you'll likely have to testify. You'll have to face them in court. Are you prepared for that? Was I prepared to look my mother in the eye and tell a courtroom that she tried to murder me? Was anyone ever prepared for that? Yes, I said, because 12 other people live in that building. Mr. Kowalski, who yelled at me to get out. Mrs. Chen, who held my hand. The young couple with a baby in 2B. The university students who always held the door open. If that fire had spread faster, if the sprinklers had failed, they could have died too. This isn't just about me. Detective Park nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I think you're incredibly brave. I don't feel brave. I feel like my entire reality just shattered. That's allowed too. They arrested my mother and stepfather 4 days later. I heard about it from Detective Park, not from them. My mother's first call wasn't to me, it was to a lawyer. Her second was to her sister, my Aunt Diane, who immediately called me. Isabelle, what have you done? Her voice was shrill with panic. Your mother is in jail. They're saying she started a fire, that she tried to, but that's insane. You know your mother. She would never. She did, though. My voice was flat. They have her on security cameras. They have her fingerprints on the device. They have the fraudulent insurance policies. She did it, Aunt Diane. But there must be some mistake. Maybe she was just visiting, maybe. At midnight? In a building she's never been to? In an apartment she's never visited? And then a fire just coincidentally starts exactly where she was seen going? Silence. You don't understand, my aunt said finally. Your mother is under so much stress. Gregory's situation, the money problems. She hasn't been thinking clearly. She was thinking clearly enough to drive 3 hours, bypass building security, plant an incendiary device, set a timer, and leave. That's not stress, Aunt Diane. That's premeditation. How can you talk about your own mother like this? After everything she's done for you? And there it was. The family loyalty card. The "but she's your mother" defense. As if biology erased attempted murder. Everything she's done for me? I heard my voice rising and didn't care. She tried to kill me. She set a fire in my apartment while I was sleeping. Do you understand what that means? I could have died. The 12 other people in that building could have died. The baby in 2B is 6 months old. Would you be saying "but family" if that baby had burned? You're being dramatic. Your mother would never actually let you die. She probably just wanted to scare you into helping them financially. I hung up, blocked her number, blocked 3 other relatives who called with similar messages over the next week, blocked my mother's friends from church who had the audacity to send me messages about forgiveness and Christian mercy. The only family member who didn't defend them was my father's brother, Uncle James, who I barely knew. He called once, said, "I always knew Patricia was cold, but this is beyond anything I imagined. If you need anything, I'm here, no strings." Then he respected my space and didn't push. Maya was the one who kept me standing. She'd been in Seattle for work when the fire happened, and when she got back and I told her everything, she sat down on her couch and cried. Then she got up, went to her spare room, and said, "You're staying here as long as you need. Forever, if necessary. We're family now, the kind you choose, which is better anyway." The trial was 8 months later. 8 months of therapy, of nightmares about fire, of jumping every time I smelled smoke. 8 months of rebuilding my life from ashes, literally. The museum had been incredible, giving me paid leave and helping me find temporary housing. My insurance company had paid out quickly once the investigation concluded arson by a third party. I'd moved into a new apartment, ground floor, with 3 different locks and a security system that I checked obsessively. But nothing could prepare me for walking into that courtroom and seeing my mother sitting at the defendant's table in a beige suit that was probably chosen to make her look harmless and motherly. Her lawyer had tried for bail, but given the severity of the charges, attempted murder, arson, insurance fraud, 12 counts of reckless endangerment, it had been denied. She looked smaller than I remembered, older. When her eyes met mine, there was no remorse, no apology. Just cold assessment. Like she was calculating whether I'd actually go through with testifying. I sat in the witness box and told my story. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Sarah Kim, walked me through everything. The phone call asking for money. My mother's reaction when I couldn't provide the full amount. The night of the fire. That devastating phone call where she told me I was bothering her. And, Miss Reeves, Prosecutor Kim said, can you read the text message your mother sent you 3 days after the fire? I pulled out my phone, hands shaking. Heard about your little fire. Hope you learn to be more careful with candles. Let us know if you need anything. Dad and I are here for you. Your mother mentions candles. Did you have any candles burning that night? No. I'd been working on my laptop until I fell asleep. There were no candles in my apartment at all. So why would your mother mention candles? To establish a false narrative, to make it seem like I was careless and caused the fire myself. My mother's lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit, tried to paint me as a troubled daughter with a grudge. Isn't it true that you've had conflicts with your mother for years? That you moved away from Victoria, specifically to get away from your family? I moved for work. And yes, we've had conflicts, primarily because my mother's love has always been conditional on what I could provide for her financially. Isn't it possible you're exaggerating your mother's supposed coldness because you're angry she couldn't help you immediately after the fire? I looked directly at him. My mother had 3 hours to drive to my apartment, plant a device designed to burn me alive in my sleep, and drive back to establish an alibi. She had time to plan murder but not time to offer me a place to stay after my home burned down. I'm not exaggerating anything. I'm stating facts. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage showing my mother entering and leaving the building. Her fingerprints on components of the incendiary device. Phone records showing calls between my mother and stepfather that night with suspicious gaps. The fraudulent life insurance policy. Financial records showing their desperate need for money. Expert testimony about the sophistication of the device and the timing required to set it. But the moment that sealed it was when Detective Park testified about the building's layout. He brought up architectural plans and showed the jury something I hadn't known. My apartment was at the end of a hallway with only one exit. If the fire had blocked that hallway, which it easily could have given how it was set, I would have been trapped. In your expert opinion, Prosecutor Kim asked, could Miss Reeves have survived if she hadn't woken up when she did? No, Detective Park said firmly. The fire was designed to spread rapidly. The accelerant used was specifically chosen for its speed and heat. If Miss Reeves had been asleep for another 5 minutes, the hallway would have been impassable. She would have died from smoke inhalation at best, burns at worst. This was not a fire designed to scare or send a message. This was a fire designed to kill. I watched the jury's faces shift. Watched understanding settle in. This wasn't about a family dispute gone too far. This was attempted murder, plain and simple. The deliberation took 3 days. 3 days of waiting, of watching news coverage dissect my family's dysfunction, of reading comments online from strangers who had opinions about what I should or shouldn't do. Half said I was brave, half said I was ungrateful. I stopped reading after someone wrote, "She's sending her own mother to prison. What kind of daughter does that?" The kind whose mother tried to burn her alive, apparently. When the verdict came in, Maya was with me. Uncle James had flown in from Toronto. We sat in the back row as the jury foreman stood. In the case of the Crown versus Patricia Reeves and Gregory Reeves, on the charge of attempted murder, we find the defendants guilty. On the charge of arson, guilty. On the charge of insurance fraud, guilty. On 12 counts of reckless endangerment, guilty. My mother's face crumpled. Gregory sat stone-faced. Behind me, I heard someone gasp, one of my mother's friends from church who'd somehow gotten in. The sentencing came 2 weeks later. The judge was a woman in her 60s who'd presided with firm impartiality throughout the trial. She looked at my mother and stepfather with something like disgust. "I've seen many cases in my 30 years on the bench," she said, "but few have disturbed me like this one. You, Miss Reeves, gave birth to your daughter, raised her, and then decided she was worth more to you dead than alive. You planted a device designed to kill her in her sleep, in a building with 11 other innocent residents, including a 6-month-old infant. The level of premeditation and callousness is staggering. She sentenced my mother to 15 years for attempted murder, plus 5 years for arson and the other charges, to run consecutively. 20 years total. My stepfather, as the primary architect of the scheme, got 25. My mother finally looked at me then. Not with remorse. With rage. Pure, undiluted fury that I had dared to hold her accountable. I looked back and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication. Just an enormous, echoing emptiness where my family used to be. It's been 2 years now. I'm 28, still working as a curator, still living in Vancouver. The nightmares have mostly stopped, though I still can't sleep with the bedroom door closed. I still check my locks 3 times before bed. I still flinch when I smell smoke. But I've built a new life from those ashes. Maya and I are still roommates, though she's dating now and talking about moving in with her boyfriend, which I encourage even though part of me is terrified of being alone again. Uncle James calls every month to check in. No pressure, no expectations. I've made friends at work, real friends who don't keep score of favors owed. Last month, I received a letter forwarded from my lawyer. It was from my mother, written from the Women's Correctional Facility, where she's serving her sentence. I almost threw it away without reading it. Maya said I should. You don't owe her anything, not even your attention. But I opened it anyway. Maybe I was hoping for an apology, for some acknowledgement of what she'd done, for closure. The letter was 3 pages of justifications. How Gregory had pressured her, how they'd been desperate, how she'd never actually meant for me to get hurt and just wanted to scare me into helping. How I was selfish for not visiting her in prison, for not showing basic compassion for my own mother. How she'd forgiven me for sending her to jail, and now I needed to forgive her for making a mistake. A mistake. Setting your daughter on fire is a mistake. I burned the letter in my kitchen sink and washed the ashes down the drain. Then I called my therapist and worked through why part of me still wanted to fix things with her, still wanted to make her love me. That's the insidious thing about toxic family. They program you from birth to prioritize their needs over your own safety. People ask me sometimes how I could do it, how I could testify against my own mother, send my own flesh and blood to prison. What they don't understand is that she stopped being my mother the moment she chose money over my life. The woman who birthed me wouldn't have set that fire, but the woman who did wasn't anyone I owed loyalty to anymore. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when your life is burning. Mrs. Chen, who barely knew me, gave me her blanket and held my hand. Maya gave me her home. My colleagues gave me grace and support. Uncle James gave me unconditional kindness with no strings attached. The firefighters who ran into danger to save me and my neighbors. Detective Park, who treated me with respect and dignity when my world was collapsing. Those are my family. They're the ones who earned that title. The other night, I was walking home from the museum after a late event. It was snowing again. Big fat flakes just like that night 2 years ago. For a moment, I felt my chest tighten with panic. But then I looked around at the lights in apartment windows, at a couple walking their dog, at the city I'd built a life in, and I felt something else. Peace. Not happiness. Not yet. But peace. The kind that comes from knowing I chose truth over comfort, safety over false loyalty, justice over enabling. The kind that comes from realizing I didn't just survive that fire. I used it to burn away everything that was poisoning my life, even when it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. My mother's last words to me before the verdict were, "How can you live with yourself after what you've done to this family?" I wanted to tell her, I can live with myself because I chose life. I chose 12 neighbors I barely knew over parents who saw me as a bank account. I chose truth even when it hurt. I chose to believe that attempting murder is worse than testifying about it. But I didn't say any of that. I just looked at her and said, I can sleep at night. Can you? She didn't answer. And here's what I've learned through all of this. What I wish I could tell anyone trapped in a toxic family situation. You are not obligated to maintain relationships with people who harm you, not even if they share your DNA. Especially not if they share your DNA, because those are the ones who know exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage. You are not responsible for protecting your abusers from the consequences of their actions. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. You are not selfish for choosing your own survival over their comfort. And most importantly, the people who truly love you will never, ever make you feel like you have to earn that love through suffering. Fire destroys, yes, but it also purifies. It burns away the lies we tell ourselves, the toxic bonds we cling to out of obligation or fear or hope that things might change. Sometimes you need to let everything burn to see what's really worth saving. In my case, what was worth saving was me. My life, my truth, my future. My right to exist without fear of the people who were supposed to protect me. I saved myself from the fire twice, once by running, once by testifying. I'd make the same choice both times. And 2 years later, standing in my new apartment with locks that work and friends who care and a future I'm building one careful day at a time, I can finally say, I'm not just surviving anymore, I'm living. And that fire my mother set, it didn't destroy me. It freed me.